Welcome back to the 25th episode of the Current Review, Central News, happening in conjunction with the TT Hookup. My name is Thamsanqa Tu, sometimes known as TT, sometimes Chairman, sometimes Tami, whatever you are, free to call me, whatever you want, This session, we are talking to the National Spokesperson of ActionSA, Lerato Ngobeni. Good morning, ma'am. How are you this morning?
Good morning to you. Sorry, I missed the mute button. Yes, I'm doing very well. Thank you very much for the platform and for inviting us to participate.
You guys had a very big weekend this past week. How did it go?
Yeah, we did. It was a really big weekend for us. It went very well by our sort of measure, and also the feedback that we've received so far. Everybody left there, feeling optimistic. The beat was very positive. The mood was positive, and so the reception was also quite good. I don't know if that's the function of sort of launching much later. Everybody's no longer excited about manifesto launches. I'm not sure, but by any standard, we believe that we did as well as we intended to do.
The driving theme in your manifesto is economic growth and job creation. Can you elaborate on the key drivers behind this as laid out in your manifesto?
Yeah, so we know that this election, first and foremost, this election is going to be more than just about promises, right? We've had different political parties make various promises. And those promises, you've always heard that South Africa has great policies, just terrible implementation. Now, what we are saying in the first instance, before we even make the first promise, is to say that our unique selling point, the highest one, is the fact that we are putting proposals for South Africans to consider genuine men and women, hardworking men and women, committed men and women of high ethical standard and scrutiny from our party in particular. And so we have a zero tolerance towards those who do not have the intrinsics to lead and the intrinsics to be ethical leaders. And that's the first thing. When we talk about the drivers of economic stimulation for us, we're talking about, in the very first instance, is to ensure that we restore the rule of law. We know that when you have lawlessness in the country, it creates instability, and investment and instability do not go hand in hand. And so the first thing for us is to make sure that we restore the rule of law so that you can be able to attract investment again into the country. That investment should go towards things like infrastructure development. It should ensure that, that when you have a construction boom in any country, and we intend to do that, you are able to absorb a whole, larger number of workers into the system. That's what we intend to do in terms of being able to attract greater levels of investment back into our country. The second one is, of course, the issue of load shedding. I don't know how many complaints we have received from entrepreneurs and small businesses that have either shut down or are struggling due to load shedding, because that it affects their ability to function. Let me give you a small example, like the hair salon. In a hair salon, you do need dryers, you need hot water and the like. And so somebody as small as a hair salon is unable to function when there is load shedding. What we are proposing in that regard is to say that anytime you have a monopoly in an economy, particularly in democratic systems, that monopoly doesn't work to the advancement of the greater number of people. So Eskom is a monopoly. Eskom needs competition, much like the current political system. For it to improve itself and its delivery and service to the people, it needs competition. And that's why having people like us who have come into the system, and other political parties who have now come into the system to contest these elections, means that the incumbent has got competition. And so competition is good, and particularly in its ability to drive or influence price. You know that when you've got more in the system, you are able to be more competitive in terms of pricing. So the way we want to challenge Eskom is to encourage the idea of independent power producers to be able to come into the sector and be able to compete for space, compete for price, and compete for services to our people. And so in a nutshell, those are the key thoughts from where we come from as ActionSA, and that's what we articulated at the manifesto launch.
Thank you. And how will the proposed universal basic income stimulus differ from from other social grants currently in place, like the SRD, that is 350, and how do you plan fund your proposed universal basic income stimulus program?
Okay, so of course that's a very big tenet of our offer. Oh, sorry, I don't know what's happened to. Sorry, I don't know what happened to my video there. Let me try to do it again. There's something wrong that's going on there with my video. Just give me 1 second so that I can do that.
Right.
Let me come back. Okay, great. I think I'm back. Sorry, there's something that's going on. So in terms of how we intend to support the income stimulus is we have proposed what is called the Opportunity Fund in our proposal towards particularly economic justice. And so the Opportunity Fund will attract tax from big business, in particular in South Africa. I think we proposed 20 or 25%. I have to look back and confirm those figures. And that would also go towards the universal basic income grant. In fact, we are speaking about an even higher social support grant than the 350. We all know that nobody can really survive on 350. I think we are proposing something in the region of 700 in the first year, 1,000 plus in the second year, and of course I think 1,005 or more in the third year. But we can't claim these amounts purely because our key intention is to remove people off of social grants, wean people off of social grants so that they can become employed and employable and employed sustainably through our ability to attract investment and assist the private sector to create jobs in our country. And that is why those figures for us make sense. And that is why those figures for us are attainable if in fact we do the things that we intend to do and that we have promised to do. And so that's how that would work. And that's how that would be executed. Now, a lot of people say, business doesn't want to be taxed, right? Business wants tax breaks. They don't want to be taxed more. This would not be a tax that would be impeding upon their ability to do business. What this tax would do is that if you have an environment where the private sector actually does trust the system, the political system, a lot of them are not opposed to supporting works towards social good. Remember that in our country we also have what is called corporate social investment. So you can think about it in that way in terms of legislation to say a lot of, and I think it's over 100 companies in our country that support efforts towards education, for example. I remember some time ago, investment into education by the private sector. At some point, I think just before 2010, it was in the region of about 3 billion rand coming from the private sector supporting efforts towards education. You know that if you look at the scorecard, the BBBE scorecard, you've got those different levels, and companies, according to their own sectors, would decide which ones are their key focus areas in terms of corporate social investment and the social investment fund from their corporations. So it will work much like that for us to be able to support the income stimulus.
And energy is a major issue for South Africa, and I think you touched on it just in your previous answer. But if the IPPs, introduction of the IPPs, the only solution that you propose for the long-term resolution of the power problems that we have currently?
No, obviously it can't just be the only solution, but it's got to be a solution. We are proposing a just energy transition that does not shut down coal mines in the first instance. Coal power stations in the first instance. We've pumped a lot of money as South Africa into the power stations we currently have, and we have to make sure that those function, even though going forward we may wean the system off of the dependence on coal. And so in the first instance, we will stay with coal as it is. We've got coal in South Africa, by the way. We're not importing our coal. We've got good quality coal that we do export to other countries. We should be able to use that as opposed to using third grade coal for our own power production. And so you've got independent power producers, but you also have citizens being able to plug into the go off the grid, so to speak, and generate their own energies in sustainable and environmentally friendly ways. And so one of the questions we always get asked, particularly in relation to coal power station, is to say that, are we not committed to the reducing our carbon footprint? Of course we are. No government that is responsible would not subscribe to doing that. And so for us is to say that we do need a gradual process, and we do need more people in the space. I'll give you an example as to how immediate and possible this is. We visited a community in Free State a couple of weeks ago, and this particular community is connected to the grid and to the power source that is coming from private producers. There's a company in that community that has dedicated some of their land to solar farming. And that solar farming that they have is able to power, I think the community is Botshabelo, they're able to power up that community together with themselves because they've got energy that they can spare. And so even though they're not necessarily shielded from load shedding itself, but they do experience lesser hours and lesser duration of load shedding than what we, all of you and I, experience in other parts of the country. So these solutions are there, they are possible. We are just currently being hamstrung by the politics of the day as opposed to the opportunity of the day.
You also earlier spoke about the lawlessness and crime being a hampering factor towards economic growth and investment in this country by external people who may be interested in investing. Now, what are your specific plans to expand and improve the police force and bolster the effectiveness of the NPA in this country?
So we've spoken about the rule of law, I think, since inception. It's a big thing we've got to do as South Africans. One, we've got to make sure that we capacitate the police force. We know that, like the nursing and the healthcare system, it is buckling under, the inability of the system to absorb more personnel. And then once you're able to absorb more personnel, also pay them well. All of these things are interlinked. We need a tax base that can support more personnel being able to be absorbed. And so for us is to expand the police force, but not just expand the police force with untrained people. You've got to upskill our police force to be able to do public policing more effectively. And then you've got to pay them better salaries so that, they are less susceptible and they're more protected by the state and less susceptible to bribes and corruption, which is what we have come to experience. The people of South Africa have, by and large, lost confidence in our law enforcement agencies. We have seen that. That's something you may be aware of. There's lots of crimes that are taking place in our country where people are not reporting on those crimes purely because they are not feeling that they can trust the police service. So for us is to expand and also upskill the police service and then also pay them well and remunerate them well. The other portion to what we are proposing is that, in fact, we are proposing so that the what we are calling the NPA now actually becomes a Chapter 9 institution that is going to be independent of political interference, particularly from the head of state. Because remember, currently, the head of the NPA reports to the head of state. And so if the head of state is himself compromised, as we saw during the Jacob Zuma years, efforts were made to hollow out the capacity and capability of the National Prosecuting Authority. We are also proposing that the idea of high crime investigation should be enhanced like we had with the Scorpions. We may or may not call it the Scorpions, but we want an outfit like the Scorpions to be able to come back into the system, be politically independent, so that they're able to pursue high crimes that take place in our country. And this is not just high crimes committed by politicians. We are talking here about high crimes. You see now we've got the unfortunate suicide of Marcus Jooste of Steinhoff. And so we are saying that, even in the private sector, because once you have somebody who's corrupted, there is a corruptor who's doing the corrupting. And so, all of that is a value chain, and we should be able to prosecute those and bring them to book, irrespective of the sector from which they come, whether it's a private sector, whether it's the public sector, whether it is in the political sphere. We should be able to prosecute those. And so that's some of the points that we make, that we emphasize upon in our manifesto.
And in your manifesto, you also talk about immigration reform. What are the practical steps that you would take to secure borders and streamline visa processes? And what do you say to the charge that ActionSA is actually a xenophobic organization?
Well, let me start with the last point. I think that, and I think we cannot harp on this enough. We have stated it, we are restating it, and we are unapologetic about it. Xenophobia, people must understand what it means. Xenophobia is the hatred of other people who look like you but don't come from where you come from. To say that South Africans hate those who look like them just because they come from elsewhere is something that we abhor. It's something that we frown upon. As ActionSA and as South Africans, given that we come from a history of huge division in our country, there is no way that we can support such bigotry in our country. The people who are punting that we are xenophobic are people who have different interests. We are not the first country to want the rule of law to apply. When you travel anywhere as a South African, you are required to have documentation to get to where you're going. I don't know why it must be exempt for other nations when they come to South Africa. We don't care from where people come from. We don't care whether they come from Europe, America, China, Russia. We don't care where they come from. If you're a non-national of South Africa, if for you to be in this country, you must be lawfully documented to do so. That is not something that we can shy away from. And, there's also a saying that goes, it is not what you are called that is important. It is what you respond to. So people can call us xenophobic all day long. We know we're not xenophobic. What we want is the rule of law to be applied. Now, in terms of securing our borders, we do need a stronger border management system. We do need stronger border management patrolling. And currently, you have a lot of corruption in the system. You have border management control officers who are being paid bribes to allow people to move through our borders. It's not like people are doing it in the dead of night. We've been to the borders. We've seen how people just jump across the border, unabated, and it feels very disempowering for South Africans. We went there as people who have got capacity to advocate, to make noise, to put light on this issue, and they pass you just like they're crossing the road. And so while we have a border management authority, by the way, that is on standby, they are lame ducks. They have absolutely no capacity to manage this situation. What we need to do, like the police force, we need patriotic South Africans to become officers of these borders. We need to make sure that whatever infrastructure we are putting up at the borders cannot just be destroyed and then we leave it destroyed. If you see the fence at Beitbridge, for example, that fence is destroyed. People cross over it, but there's no effort to repair it. I mean, that should be an indictment on border management and the government. Somebody should be trying to repair it, reinforce it, put whatever mechanisms they can to be able for that fence to stand. And so if the following day you find a fence that is broken, then you need more boots on the ground to be able to curb, the ability of people moving around. We spoke to a couple of Zimbabweans at Beitbridge, and they say, some of them say, I come, once a month, I come every second day. The people who are selling at the border, the street vendors at the border are not South Africans. And we spoke to South Africans who were traumatized by that because they are being intimidated into not participating in that economy, and they're on the sidelines. These guys come into South Africa with their fruits and vegetables, put them on the side of the South African border, on our side of the border, sell their goods, and then cross the border again towards the other side to go home. I mean, that cannot be. We've got South Africans who can sell vegetables and become street vendors for those who are coming in and out of our borders. That shouldn't be allowed to happen. If you go to Vicksburg border,
anybody stopping them, South Africans?
No, there was nothing. There was absolutely nothing happening. We were there for almost a full day watching the situation.
The South Africans who want to sell their products also on the same terrain as the Zimbabweans who come from the other side.
They can't compete. And South Africans wouldn't be going across the border to the other side when the market is this side. I mean, if Zimbabweans are coming this side and people are buying on this side, it's a huge value chain where competition is unfair on that side because the law is not on their side and because people are paying bribes to be able to function in the way that they have been functioning. And so that needs an entire overhaul. If you go to Vicksburg, for example, the border between Free State and Lesotho, the Abasotho, you should go there on SASSA payment day. The Abasotho who cross the border there to go and get their SASSA grant and go back to Lesotho. The bottom line is that we have got endemic and systemic corruption that has permeated every facet of our society in this country. And until we restore the rule of law and we make it clear to everyone, including officials, including politicians, including private sector, and we create a culture where corruption cannot be tolerated in South Africa, it's going to be very difficult for any government that is not committed to doing that to be able to put our country back on the right path. And so us as ActionSA, we are saying we are going to be bold. Yeah.
Sorry, man, but would it not be easier though to rather call for the demolition of these borders and allow for free movement between countries, such that there is we don't have these problems of trying to maintain a law which is difficult to maintain?
It is not a difficult law to maintain. We're not the only country that has borders. I think South Africans need to not back down and be intimidated into becoming, cowards because we feel that we don't want the world to hate us. The borders have always been there. Basotho were not just able to willy-nilly go into Zulu territory even before, I want to say, colonialism. You did need permission to be able to go esigodlweni Zulu when you are coming from a different land. That had nothing to do with discrimination. It had everything to do with territorial integrity. And so having to have papers doesn't mean that you limit free movement or you limit free trade. What you need are laws that say you can do X, Y, and Z when you cross over into Zimbabwe. Give me an example. Where do you find South Africans in Zimbabwe, in Malawi, anywhere else that they have infiltrated those countries in the ways that we are experiencing in South Africa? Can you just go and put up a stall in Zimbabwe without being checked? There's nothing like that. When we travel to Zimbabwe, you need paperwork as a South African to go to Zimbabwe. Why are we allowing ourselves to capitulate to a different standard when in fact there's nothing wrong with it? All what you need is your papers. Go to your Home Affairs, get the documentation that is necessary, and be able to move freely between countries. I mean, you've got a passport, you've got a work permit. If you've got a work permit, you need critical skills. But as we know, we've got Department of Home Affairs officials who have been bribed, who have collaborated in creating this and this pandemic of people being able to just come in and out of our country because nobody is checking that. And so we are saying we want to also make it easier for foreign nationals who want to come into our country but who possess critical skills we don't have in the country to be able to do so. For years and years, we have had issues with the South African speed, the ability, how cumbersome it is to obtain documentation legally, lawfully to come into South Africa. Now we've made it easier for unlawful ones to come into South Africa, but we've made it harder for lawful ones to come into South Africa. To end this point, let me give you an example. I personally, as a law-abiding South African citizen, I do not have a passport. My passport, when I went to go and renew it, I was told it's been a year now that I can't get my passport back because it's under investigation. You ask, what are they investigating? You can never get an answer. It's going to be over a year now if we end this year. I applied last year, April. Until today, I don't have my passport. If I inquire what are they investigating, I do not get an answer. I get an answer that says it's either one of the couple of reasons. One of those reasons is that my documentation may have been cloned and that my passport may have already been issued. And so somebody else is walking around as myself, using my passport, going in and out of the country, whereas me, as a natural born citizen of this country, I'm unable to get a passport, and therefore I'm unable to travel anywhere in the world, anywhere in the region. I can't travel. What do you call that? It means that it's easier for me to go downtown in Braamfontein, enter somewhere there in some bootleg environment, pay my 2,000 rand, 5,000 rand, and I can get a passport faster than how the Department of Home Affairs can assist me as a citizen. That cannot be That cannot be allowed to happen. It is unfair to citizens. You would not be able to do it anywhere else in any other country.
Moving from that point, how does ActionSA plan to meet the environmental sustainability goals mentioned in your manifesto, and are there any concrete plans in mind around this?
No, sure. So the issue of the environment and climate change comes in terms of how we do things like renewables as a nation. You know that, for example, that we talk about the idea of staying within the coal manufacturing or our ability to give South Africans coal and use that as our ability to be able to reduce our carbon footprint. Now, there's a couple of things that we are planning to do. One of them is to make sure that when we have things like plastic being manufactured, those will be, we want to move away from the production of things like plastic. Sorry, I didn't realize my glue is working. What do you call it? My video has gone. We want to number one, review the regulatory framework for us in the climate change regulatory framework in our country to see what it is that is more sustainable. I know that, for example, the idea of fracking has been quite topical in this regard, where fracking is not considered a climate change friendly activity. And so activities like those should be policed. There should be a marker as a country, which is what we are wanting to achieve, a marker that says, where are we trying to go in terms of what the MDGs are prescribing, and look at what our footprint is, and then undertake various measures to be able to reduce our carbon footprint and make sure that South Africa is sustainable, is environmentally sustainable and environmentally friendly. One of the things that we know for sure, for example, is that if you go primarily in the rural areas where people do rely on coal stoves, and they rely on they don't necessarily have greater access to energy, we should be able to go into those communities and make sure that we are able to provide energy for those communities. It's going to take time. We're not the only country that is challenged in this regard, but South Africa is small enough for us to be able to achieve that. Things like plastic, I mean, you've seen our inability to deal with infrastructure decay, where we've got sewer going into our oceans. That is a function of infrastructure maintenance that we have been unable to do successfully in the current time. That will be one of the most immediate undertakings we will have, so that we're able to curb that from happening.
The health sector is a serious concern for many South Africans. How do you view the implementation of the NHI as ActionSA, and what difference or what different policy would you propose if you don't really agree with the NHI as implemented by the current government?
So we have said that the NHI, while we agree with it in principle as an aspirational document, under the current circumstances, particularly where we are dealing with corruption in the system, we know that the South African healthcare system is under deep corruption. It's actually one of the spaces where our democracy has not been able to reduce the two-tier. Remember, now we are dealing with